Hello, everyone. My name is Erica. I'm with Dogwise, and I am joined this morning by Juliana DeWillems, and we are here today to talk about Juliana's amazing book, Manage It. Oh, good, you've got your coffee too.
Oh, of course.
Of course, we've got lots of copies, and we
Mhm.
want to invite our audience to join us today and ask questions about this book and ask questions about management. So if you've got management questions and you want to ask the author, ask the expert, that's what we're here for today. We also want to know where you're tuning in from. So let us know, leave a comment. Where are you listening from? And we want to know, have you read the book? Do you have the book? Do you need a coupon code so you can get the book 10% off? Let us know. So leave us a comment. So Juliana, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then also, how did this book come to be? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, Erica. I am Juliana DeWillems. I am a trainer in the Washington, D.C. area. I own JW Dog Training, and I've been a trainer for about a decade now, working first for somebody else, and then my own business I opened in 2020. So I feel like I have seen lots and lots of dogs and lots of families and people wanting to help their dogs, needing help with training their dogs. And after many, many years, I started to see a theme that while there are a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about training and they want to do a lot of training and do all the things and totally solve behavior problems through behavior modification, there were a lot of people who were like, this is a lot of work, or like, oh, like, okay, I'm on board, but like, this is a lot. Or there were people who are like, yeah, actually don't mind my dog's behavior. There's just a few things that frustrate me. And there's this incredible solution that fits with all of those, which is management. And I was recommending it to my clients more and more. And I was seeing its success more and more. And so I finally decided, it was 2022, maybe 2 years ago. And I had this idea one day. I said, maybe I'll write a book. It was like the first thought was like, maybe I'll write a book. And then I was like, what would I write a book about? It's like, I do have a lot to say, but what would I write a book about? And I said, wait a second. No one has written a book on this topic of management. There's no book out there that talks about what management is, how to use it, all this stuff. And I was like, that would be so useful. Instead of me having to regurgitate this information to every single person I meet, I can just hand them my book and say, read this, this will change your life. And so that's where the idea was born from. I pitched it to Dogwise, and after some back and forth, some convincing that this was a very worthwhile topic that I had plenty to talk about with it, the book writing process started, and 2 years later, we had a book.
Well, and this book is so near and dear to my heart because it's the first book that I saw at Dogwise, like in my time at Dogwise, the first book that I saw go from an idea, a conversation at a conference that you and I had a conversation, and now it's in our hands and we can actually hold it. And it's also near and dear to my heart because this is my puppy right here.
Yeah. You took
So
that amazing cover photo. Yeah.
yeah. So getting to do, I mean, everything from talking to you from the very beginning of like, this is a great idea. There are a
Mhm.
lot of books out there that include management. There's a lot of books that have a chapter about the idea of management. But
Mhm.
what you did was something so unique where you actually went in and were able to say, here's this behavior problem and here's this management solution for that behavior problem. And I remember our first meeting where we both thought like, this is going to be a little book. It's going to be like the length of On
Like a
Talking Terms,
pamphlet
like,
book.
yeah, like
Yeah.
on calming signals kind of a thing, right? Something like
Yeah.
something this big that we wanted to have, like you can just
Yes.
flip through it and look at the pictures,
Mhm.
and then it got bigger. And I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
something that's so fascinating, you have such a great following on social media, and I have been following you for a while, and you do have a lot to say, and being able to take all of that and be able to put it in one place specifically about, I mean, know that you haven't put everything you have to say into
I
one
know.
book, but being able to take something like that topic and condense it down, but also expand it enough that it's useful for the audience. And it's such a great, like, it's still a bite-sized book, and
Mhm.
it's packed with such amazing information in it. So do you find with your clients that, I mean, you were mentioning that like sometimes people are like, that's a lot of work to do all the behavior modification, and you hand them a management solution, they're like, great. Or do you find that you still have some client compliance problems where maybe it's difficult for people to follow through with the management solutions as well?
It totally depends. I think some people, it's like anything. Some people are really drawn to solutions that are really like low lift and easy. And then some people are still wrapped up in this idea that like controlling the environment. And just to, I'm sure a lot of people know what management is, but to kind of get us all on the same page about what management means, because it's not a scientific term. It's not really like we don't have an agreed upon definition of it in the industry. We all kind of use this term and hope we're all talking about the same thing, but it's generally like controlling the environment to influence what behaviors you do or do not see more of. The scientific term that we usually associate it with is antecedent arrangement, because obviously antecedents are what cue behaviors. And so if we control what antecedents are or are not in the environment, we're going to be able to influence what behaviors happen. So I think I really get like a wide range of responses, but what often happens is once they actually implement the management, then they're like, oh, yeah, now I know what you were saying, because honestly, the results and like the effectiveness speaks for itself. It's these solutions that can just like, gosh, make everybody go, oh, wow, okay, like we got a break from this behavior challenge, or wow, like that solved my problem without any issue. And so, well, yes, there's some explanation and convincing up front. Once they implement it, they are totally on board.
Are you meaning to tell me that the reinforcement is driving the behavior change in the humans? Are you telling me
Imagine that.
everybody? So do you get pushback? There's something you wrote about in the book that like management, it's when you came up with the subtitle that it's kind of like hacks for behavior change, right? So it's not real training. And there are people who kind of give you some pushback that, well, I want to really do the behavior change or I want to do the behavior modification. This is just a temporary solution, something like that. Is that something that you get a lot of pushback on, of people saying this is cheating or it's not fair to do it this way?
Yeah. Another reason why I really enjoyed having the whole like a whole book to write about it on, because this is such a common complaint, argument against management, is like it's not enough, or it's cheating, or it's putting a band-aid on it. To which I say in the book is like, okay, so like so I was able to go into kind of a lot of the arguments, kind of countering those claims of like, it's cheating. And most importantly is that dogs, well, any being, are always learning. Like we're not turning learning off just because we're implementing management. Dogs are always learning. And so we're just using management to influence what behaviors they're rehearsing, what behaviors are being reinforced. So if you ask me, it's part of an extremely thoughtful and smart training plan. So I feel like we're constantly, as like modern day trainers, we're constantly stuck with finding, and especially me on social media, finding like clickbait and like, so this title of like hacks for improving your dog's behavior, I'm constantly struggling. Like, let me grab in the average person, like catch your attention, and then slip a whole bunch of science and important information in there, So I wanted that catchy title because a lot, I mean, they are hacks. It's totally simple, easy ways to change behavior. And there's a ton of science that backs up why it works.
Well, and I remember when we were going through the editing process of this book, talking about like how sciencey do you get? Dog-wise, the majority of our clients and our customers are canine professionals, but something that's so great about this book is that anyone can read it. Any average, pet parent, someone who's working with a dog can flip through and say, oh, I have this one problem about counter surfing, which is my favorite management problem because it's the one we have at our house the most often. What's the solution to that? And even the as you talked about the greetings at the door, like we can train the dog to leave the chicken on the counter or to not jump on the person, but it might be easier to put up a baby gate. It might be faster to put up a baby gate than to do an entire behavior modification plan. And when you and I talked, there's a whole section in there about the science. It's about how this works, why it works the way that it does. Do you find any clients that are interested in doing more of a deep dive, or people who kind of are like, nope, Band-Aids are good, just solve our problems, we need relief?
Yeah, some behind the scenes for everybody watching it was there were interesting conversations about, one, how much science do we put in there? And two, where does it go in the book? Because I think we ended up putting it earlier in the book than I initially had it. Because I was like, no, I initially, yeah, I wanted it to be so average person friendly. Like I didn't want to like turn people off with the science too early. I didn't want people to feel like this book wasn't written for them. And of course, in the end, I'm so glad with how we ended up doing it, because while the science chapter is, it's very accurate, it is very like, it is the straightforward like learning theory. I think we conveyed the information in a way that is very easy to understand. I think if you read the How Dogs Learn chapter in this book, you actually will have a really great understanding of why management works, but also just like how dogs learn and think. And like, I'm so glad to be able to do that too, because again, there's a bazillion amazing books out there, and I think they all cover the science with varying degrees. And I'm so happy to have this like very bite-sized, concise chapter of like, hey, here's the basics of how your dog learns and why they behave the way that they do. And I also think like the reason that I like doing that is because it empowers people to understand the why. Like knowing how your dog learns helps you understand why the training technique you saw on Instagram works, why the training technique in your group class works. And it's just like, this was all that this book is about, is empowering people to understand their dog better and therefore understand how to change behavior better.
Well, and I think that that does a lot too to help to reduce the use of labels, especially those labels
Mhm.
that we find to be unhelpful, to have our clients come to us, or, even just a friend that says, I've got my dog that does this thing. It's so annoying, or my dog is so stubborn. Why can't I just get my dog to
Mhm.
understand not to jump on people who come in the front door, or not to jump on the counter and steal my lunch? And to be able to give them that, like you said, that concise but good introduction of being able to understand this is how dogs learn. And like you said, they're always learning. We're all always learning and responding
Mhm.
to our environment. So I think it is really great that that got included in the book and was able to have that section in there. And you and I talked about like, I think you even wrote in there, you can skip this if you're not a total
Yeah.
behavior nerd and you
Yeah.
don't want to read all of
Yeah.
you don't want to know what antecedent arrangement is, and you just want to know what management is, then
Mhm.
keep reading, right? Skip ahead.
Yeah.
I do want to invite anyone who's listening in to let us know where you're listening from, and let us know if you have a copy of Juliana's book or if you have read it yet. And we are definitely welcoming questions. We did have someone online. We opened up some questions ahead of time who wanted to know more about your leash pulling
Mhm.
chapters, and kind of discussing a little bit about how a leash is a management tool, which is not maybe a management tool that we think of very often. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think people see leashes as management tools in the way of like, um, uh, we're like preventing them from running away. Like in that sense, we all see them as management tools. Like we keep a dog on leash, which I talk about in the coming when called section. Like we keep a dog on leash to prevent them from leaving us. And that way we're used to using it as management. But the leash and the gear in general that you use with your dog is a way to influence what behavior you do or don't see more of. So specifically, I don't know, I don't want to give all the secrets in the book away, but this one I talk about all the time. And you know me, I don't like to gatekeep, but still read the book. But a longer leash. So, I love Kiki Ablon says, we put dogs on 6-foot leashes and then keep them 7 feet from everything they want to sniff and
Hmm.
interact with, which is just like the dog human world colliding in a nutshell. Like, of course, dogs are going to pull on leash when they their primary form of exercise is to walk on leash. They have naturally quicker strides than us. They have way different priorities than us. They want to stretch their legs. They need to get exercise. Like, so basically a shorter leash is just often going to make your life a lot harder. And so even just giving yourself an extra 2 or 4 feet for your leash, so an 8 or a 10-foot leash, can make a huge difference, because your dog may be walking the exact same way that they do on a 6-foot leash, but they have that 2 extra feet. And so they're not going to put tension on the leash as frequently. And of
Mhm.
course, that is a totally general statement. Some people are like, oh, if, it doesn't matter how long the leash is, they're going to hit the end of it. Like, okay, there's a bazillion things to work through from a training perspective. And there are plenty of dogs that you put them on a 2 extra feet of leash, it solves the problem. So, and it's just something I want people thinking about is like these small changes to the environment, to your dog's day, can actually make a huge change in their behavior.
And I think that's a great thing is, with this book and with this topic, changing the way that we are thinking about it, changing the way that we are thinking about our dog's behavior or how we are influencing that environment. And I think especially as trainers, we so often are focused on the C of the ABCs, right? We're always focused on the consequences and where's the treats and where's the reinforcement. But the idea of really backing up and saying, can we set our dogs up for success? Can we make it less likely that they hit the end of the leash or eat the chicken salad off the counter by arranging the environment in a way that makes everyone's life easier? And there's, like I said, a little bit of that pushback with the owners have to kind of step up too. Like now we're talking about human behavior change and being able to say, do I and everyone in the household have the discipline to make sure that these management techniques stay in place so that we can maybe supplement it with training? And that is, I'm guessing, something that you would recommend as well when we were talking about kind of that pushback of it's just a Band-Aid. For some people, that's enough. They can just solve that problem and say, okay, that we just keep, the baby gate up and then we don't have to worry about the dog in the kitchen. Do you have a lot of clients or do you hear from a lot of people that, okay, now that we have the Band-Aid and the immediate pain point is relieved enough, we are interested in doing more training and kind of doing a deeper dive?
Yeah, and actually you mentioned how as trainers we're often so focused on the C, the consequence. I actually just last weekend at the Virtual Clicker Expo gave a whole talk about antecedent arrangement and how to pair management. So like this book being for the average person, how to take what's in here, the easy stuff, and then pair it with all of our training knowledge, still focusing on the antecedent, the A. Like y'all got the C covered. Those, the click and treat, I'm not worried about that. You guys can figure out how to reinforce behavior you like, but how do we make sure that that behavior shows up? And that's where, like, as trainers, that's why I love management, because it makes our life so easy, so much easier as trainers, whether we stick to just management or not. So like obviously with trainers, we all know that management is part of a good training plan. 1, to give the clients relief from the behavior challenge. 2, to prevent the rehearsal of the behavior. And 3, it gives you a starting point. It gives you a success point to put the management in place and then start implementing your training plan. Why would we do a training plan if if we haven't figured out how to stop the problem behavior? Like it feels like, you're just running on a treadmill, like you're not getting anywhere. So that's, as good trainers, knowing obviously how to implement management for the people who just want management, they don't care about anything else, but also how to implement management as part of our bigger training plan, I think is so important. It's such an important skill set.
Well, and I do think that gets overlooked. I know when I first started out as a trainer, it was focused on the consequence part
Oh
of
yeah.
the equation and the click and treat and being able to modify that behavior. And something you touched on earlier, we're trying to improve our dog's behavior to fit our lifestyles as
Right.
humans. And that conflicting needs can have, like you said, a pain point in there. So really expanding how we think about it as trainers to be able to better serve our clients, or even just as an average pet parent who just wants a better relationship with their dog, thinking about both ends of that equation, maybe equally, because I think that we don't put enough weight on that antecedent arrangement part. So I love that you're talking about that especially in a more detailed or kind of expanded way. Are you speaking on this topic at Clicker Expo in a couple of months?
So unfortunately, I'm not. But the good thing about the Virtual Clicker Expo is everything is, I believe, available for purchase after the fact. So even if you guys didn't go to the conference, I'm pretty sure you can still get specific talks. So I'm not talking about it. Let me think of what I'm talking about at Expo. Expo is in Chicago. No, I don't think anything. I am doing I believe like the author, there's like a book hour author signing one of the days. I think I'm doing that. So no, unfortunately, that was the only time I talked about that topic. But writing this book has really, like, 1, helped me realize how much I love antecedent, but really sparked my interest in, like, how can we really think about antecedent arrangement to make our training as effective and easy, really, as possible? And the thing is, like, it's just like when you first learn about positive reinforcement training, you're like, oh my God, these are all the ways you can do it. It's like once you start to see the world through antecedents, you're like, oh my gosh, look at all the ways we can influence behavior, and we can make our training, again, more efficient, make results happen, which, we're humane trainers. Results are like not always super top on our list, but they're up there, especially when we're working with clients. So it's it's really like sparked an interest in me in how to optimize antecedent arrangement as a trainer.
Do you feel like you've learned more since you've written the book, or maybe like something that you wish that you had put in the book but that you didn't get a chance to because you didn't know it yet? I think
Oh my God.
that's the problem with writing a book, is it takes a while, and by the time it's published you're like, oh, I would have added this into that chapter.
Somebody did warn me. I think many people warned me about that like, first of all, writing a book, for those of you who haven't done it yet, it's a very like kind of vulnerable process. Like, put your words in writing forever. Like, what I put in this book, like, lives out there. And so every day it feels like my thought process is changing and my perspective is evolving. And so there's already things that, like, already I'm kind of like, I don't know if I would have like written it like that, or like, oh yeah, I wish I would have included it like that. Like, I still stand by everything that's in there, but just like these little things are starting to change. And I hope that there will never be a point where like, oh my God, I can't believe I included that. But I mean, that could happen, because like, I'm so proud of our industry for constantly evolving. And so, no, the fact that like this was written, I don't even know, 2 years ago at this point. I mean, it's crazy to me. So I also like, I haven't read it in a while, so I'd be very curious what would happen if I went back and actually read it. But no, I mean, I think I think I would have probably no problem writing like a volume 2 or whatever, like a updated version.
You're already ready for the second edition? It's only been out for a year. Oh my gosh. One thing I really love about this book that we were able to put in here, and I think that, when you're talking about when you write down your words, like they're out there forever, but your primary medium that I know you through is social media, where then you're able to, I mean, yes, maybe you've got someone who goes through your whole feed and looks at something that you wrote 2 years ago, but more often than not, people are looking at your most recent content. And so there's kind of this like refresh rate available there. And something that I really love that we were able to do in this book, in addition to the pictures that were put in it, was being able to put in QR codes so that there's an option to view a video. Because I think that one significant limitation of writing a book and trying to explain a technique is not being able to see it in action. So being able to add in those videos, and you're so good at doing those videos that help explain the techniques that you're talking about, I think was such a great addition to this book. And it's something that's really new for us at Dogwise, to try and get some video format into a written format of a book. But yeah. I think that was such a great addition, such a good idea on your part to add that in there.
Well, first of all, I definitely can't take credit for it. You definitely were the one that were like, oh, by the way, we can start doing QR codes, which like is mind blowing to me. Like, I mean, it makes so much sense. And by the way, thank goodness for COVID, like QR codes had the biggest glow up. And like, but like, yeah, the fact that I can be explaining something and just immediately someone can access it on their phone, it's like crazy. And so I think it adds so much value. And I think in a perfect world I would have done like a million more QR codes, but there does have to come a point where like, no, this is actually a book, like if
that's okay. Right. We have that QR code at the beginning that says where they can find you.
Exactly. Like if you want more, like
more videos
on Instagram. But yeah, it's so cool. And it's just was like it's such an incredible blend. Like, again, totally kudos to you for suggesting it, and to Dogwise for like being open to it and starting to incorporate that. It's such a important modern spin on the written word, you know?
Yeah, and again, I think there's people who have different learning styles and different ways
Yes.
they can absorb that information. And when we were talking about the creation of this book and kind of how it was organized when we first said we want it to be bite-sized, but also accessible, but also
Hmm.
not watered down,
Yep.
being able to have someone come to your social media through the book or to the book through your social media and then kind of, okay, now I want to have a deeper dive because as you
Hmm.
know, there's a lot of information on social media that hasn't gone through an editing process with a team of people who say, we need to fact check that before it goes out into the world. So being able to give people access to that. Do you find that you have a lot of people who come to you who say like, I've tried everything, right? Like I've tried it all and I don't know what to do. And then you maybe hand them a management solution and they're like, oh, that was almost too easy.
Yeah, I think that, yes, I think we have a lot of people have a tendency to overcomplicate it or like overthink it or think that because the behavior challenge is so hard to live with or so intense that like there's no way that the solution could possibly be that simple. And so, yes, I think definitely people have been shocked by one, how effective it is, and two, that like I as a trainer I'm saying they're allowed to use it, like, oh my god, for my dog has been making me miserable, barking at the UPS truck every day for the last 3 years, and you're saying I can just put up window film? Like, what? And then, check back in 2 weeks later, oh my god, my house has never been this quiet, you know? Um and so, yeah, I think people are very pleasantly surprised by the solutions.
I think that's fantastic. Well, for everyone who tuned in and anyone who's watching the recording, we definitely encourage you to grab a copy of Juliana's book, Manage It, especially if you just have even just one or two problems. If you've just got a dog that's chewing on everything or counter surfing or jumping on your visitors coming in the door, some of my favorite solutions that you pose in here, some easy and quick, like you said, simple solutions to implement right away. And of course, that book is available at Dogwise. And Juliana, can you tell us your handles for social media so that people know where to find you if they have other questions?
Yeah, come find me on Instagram, JW Dog Training. Same thing on Facebook. That's my website too. And I would love to connect with everybody on social media.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And Juliana, thank you so much for your time today. See
Thanks,
you next time.
Erica.